Dimensions are my main annotation tool that I'll use for putting information on my drawing, such as size or angle, and specifying locations. Because our drawing is drawn in its actual size in model space, when I dimension, the actual information is picked up from the object when we do our dimensioning. If your object isn't drawn to the correct size, then your dimension information will not be correct. By default, my dimensions are associative. That means that they are directly associated to the object that they are measuring. So when I put a linear dimension on this rectangle, if I should change, let's say I use a stretch command, and I stretch my rectangle, you'll notice that the data that's held in the dimension is updated to reflect the new size. My tools for dimensioning can be found on the Home tab and the Annotation palette, where I have a small set of my total amount of dimensioning tools. I also have a flyout for setting the styles that I'm currently using. For my dimensioning tools, you notice that I have a flyout that shows those tools. I have a more complete set of dimensioning tools under the Annotate tab and under Dimensions, where I have additional buttons and flyouts. I can also use my menu browser under Dimensions, and I have a full set of dimensioning tools that I can access from here, a few that I can only access from this spot. When I'm dimensioning my objects, I want to make sure that my object snaps are turned on and that I have appropriate object snaps picked that I'll be using as dimension points, especially things like endpoint or intersection. Making sure that those are turned on, I can now, from my Home tab, I'm going to get my linear dimension. What it wants is the first point of my dimension, and notice the object snap finding the endpoint. I want to make sure that I snap directly to my object. This will give me the most accurate dimensions. After finding the 2 points, then I can see the dimension with its dimension line and arrowheads and extension lines, and I click to place the dimension onto the drawing. Now you notice that by clicking on the very end point, I have a small gap in between my extension line and the object, and that gap is necessary to meet dimensioning standards. To add another linear dimension, any dimension that's going to be finding the distance and project that horizontally or vertically is going to be a linear dimension. If I had an angled area like this and I apply a linear dimension, you can see that it will dimension it for the height and it will not dimension it for its length along the angle of the line. My baseline command will create a series of dimensions that all measure from the same origin or baseline. To use this command, I'll have to find it on my Annotate tab, where I have a flyout that sets to either baseline or continue. I have to start by applying one dimension, and so I'm going to apply it to the end where I want the baseline to originate. And when I click on baseline, it automatically finds that last dimension, and I start building from that baseline. I will click on each of the points that I want a dimension created for, and I'm snapping to these endpoints. When I'm finished, I hit enter, and I've built a set of baseline dimensions across my object, starting with the first dimension that was applied. Using the continue command, you can create a set of dimensions that all line up and give the distance between each of the extension lines. Continue command can be found on the Annotate tab, and it shares a flyout with baseline. To use my continue, I have to first start with a linear dimension. I'm going to start at this end, dimensioning this object, and I'll place the dimension in the place where I want the continuous set to be created. My next command will be continue, and it automatically finds my last dimension and then adds to it. So I click on the next and continuing each of the spots where I would like an extension line and a dimension to be placed, and when I'm done I'll say enter, and I've created my continuous dimension set. I can add a jog line to my dimension when I'm dimensioning an object that is not its actual length. In this case, we have a broken section taken out of the middle of the wrench. My dimension shows a true amount, but the jog line tells me that if I were to actually measure this, it's not going to be what my measurement shows because of the broken section. To create a jog line, first I would create a linear dimension. Then from my flyout, I would choose jog line and choose the dimension. And then I can choose along that line the place where I want the jog to be presented. Now, in this case, I would have to actually change the dimension value because this is 130 millimeters, not 64. The easiest way to do that would be just to click on my dimension, and I'll right-click and choose the Properties palette. Scrolling down on this dimension property, I come to my text, and I have a box for text override. Right now you see it's displaying the measurement. I'm going to click in here and override the text to say 130. And now my new display gives me the actual length, even though it wouldn't be measured to that on the piece of paper when it's printed. To create a dimension that shows the exact length of the line and my dimension line is parallel to the line being measured, I need to use my aligned dimension. I can activate that off the flyout and then pick the ends of the line where I would like the aligned dimension created. And notice that the dimension line is created parallel to those 2 points. To place an angular dimension, I can use my angular option on the flyout and then click on the lines to dimension that angle. Now notice here I can dimension on the inside and I get the arrowheads. If I move to the outside, it automatically creates extension lines to show that dimension. So I click on the 2 lines that form the angle and then pull to place that angle. Depending on the location that I want, I'm given a variety of options.